and sit down.
Welcome to Stu and the Nunn, an online radio show and podcast focused on national security, policy, politics, and selfless service. We're here to give you an honest opinion, a different perspective, and hopefully a few laughs. We do this by not only interviewing guests, but also sharing our own perspectives and asking you, the listener, to interact with us on the show chat room, via our Facebook page, and on Twitter. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode, November 15th of Stu and the Nunn. Stu here with my good brother from another motherland, Nunn. What's up, Toby? How you doing?
Oh, just living the dream, the North American one. Excited about tonight. Excited about the week that's coming to a close. It's been a long one, but a good one because we've been celebrating a lot of different things, but primarily the contributions that veterans have made to this country. And it usually revolves around the 11th day of the 11th month at the 11th hour, to which the armistice was signed, lest we forget. And it's been a wonderful week. And tonight, I think it's going to culminate and we're about to hit a pinnacle. I think we're about to do something really cool on tonight's show. And I'm excited that I just get to be a fly on the wall.
Yeah, I when you think about it, the timing it couldn't be better with it. With the 100th anniversary of the armistice and the birth of Veterans Day and the armistice, the ceasefire for World War I, the war that was to end all wars. So yeah, we couldn't ask for a better one. We're so excited for you to join us tonight. We have been pimping this show out over all the socials, through all of our friends, family, people we don't like. It doesn't matter. We're glad you're joining us on this November 15th. We will be taking next week off. It is Thanksgiving. We will be giving thanks and doing all that. Toby, I got to ask you real quick. Are you in the Great Northern Studio of Canada? Because you are wrapped up in a jacket like you were just snug as a bug in a rug there. And nice, a cryptic jacket, too.
Well, I believe in being fashionable while dressing in layers. But no, there's a minor cold snap sliding through the southern states right now.
Okay.
And
I'm just curious. You look. I could use that too. It's in the 30s here in the northern studio. So, but I have heat in my house. So just saying.
I think we're out of. We still might be in the 30s. We were in the 20s yesterday. So I think we're on the comeback trail. I think this weekend's going to be really nice. But if you're unprepared, and a lot of this is preemptive and preventative, because I've spent the last weekend out in the elements. So I'm trying to just keep it cornered and warm.
Yeah, awesome. Well, good to have you. And like I say, you're looking very fashionable. So, hey, be sure you can text us tonight, 512-361-1178. You can message us on Facebook. We are going to be very focused, kind of different rules tonight. Mr. Shillo is going to come on. You've seen all the write-ups, 98 years old. Birthday was 2 Saturdays ago. I was able to wish him happy birthday on his birthday. He is going to just talk about a world of things. We're going to stay pretty quiet, and we're just going to let him roll. So we're going to ask questions, get it going. Feel free to text things in. Please comment on the Facebook. Please share this. But we are not going to interrupt. We're just going to throw something out and see where he goes with it. He's very excited to be on, but we are much more excited to have him on. So with all that, Toby, I'm going to go ahead and reach out and contact him. If you want to chat about some stuff, maybe give a little bit of history of him that you know so far, that would be great.
Well, but while you're reaching out to him, I'm going to just continue on about a couple of things that I would like to comment on. First and foremost, we talked about it on the show last week, and that was the Saturday Night Live's attempt at bad humor and bad taste. It backfired on him, and for the first time in a while, I actually got to give Saturday Night Live kudos because like they handled that well. I thought Dan Crenshaw, Lieutenant Commander Dan Crenshaw, handled it well and did great things by going on the show and being uh, being a mature adult about it.
Yeah.
So that there was that, and then speaking of immature adults, there's been a little bit of hoopla about the commander in chief, the president of the United States, not attending the 100-year
Yeah.
ceremonies in Europe due to weather.
Toby, I'm gonna interrupt you as soon as we make connection, just so you know. So
Absolutely.
I'm calling right now. Let's see.
And while he
Hello?
Hello, Mr. Shillo.
Yes.
Hey, it's Troy here. How you doing?
Oh, hi, Troy.
Hey.
I'm doing real well.
Good, good.
We got Buffalo's first big snowfall.
Yeah, we sure did. We sure did. Well, hey, sir, we got you live on the air. So you're live on the air now. Just wanted to let you know. And we wanted to welcome you to being on our show. We are very, very thrilled to have you here, and even with Buffalo's first snowfall.
Well, I find it an honor, but I also wanted to be more than just my age. Have the honor go to my battalion.
Yes, your Marine battalion.
Yes, it's First Marine Parachute Battalion.
That's right. You were in a parachute battalion. That is not many Marines held that honor.
Well, we didn't do much jumping, not in action. So.
Yep. Yeah. Well. Hey, sir. We're very glad to have you on. You and I have talked a few times. I'm joined with us is Toby Nunn, my co-host. So he's on with us too, and will be asking questions.
Oh, sure. I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to kind of go way back, and start you just celebrated your 98th birthday, and which is awesome. And I think one thing is interesting is you're living in Buffalo, but you were born in Buffalo also, right? You've lived here your whole life.
Yes, I was born here on Election Day, 1920. My mother was a suffragette, but because of me, she couldn't vote. It was the first time women could vote.
But she couldn't vote because she had a son?
Yes.
Oh, my Lord. And
I was actually born the early Wednesday morning, right after the election.
And who was voted in that year?
Harding, Warren Harding.
Yeah. He had a short...
And my mother wouldn't have voted for him.
He only had a couple years in office, I think. He died early. He only did like 2 years in office. Yeah.
But I've heard from some people they like him.
Yeah. Now, and you were born in the house that you're living in now. Is that correct?
Yes, right in this house. The room that I was born in is sort of blocked up with file cabinets and everything. So I live a life like few people. I'm truly a hermit.
Well, you've definitely had an interesting life. That is for sure.
People have been good to me.
Well, that's awesome. That is. I'm sure you've met many along your way in your few years here.
I did, yes. Well, I can't say it was bad.
Yeah. Well, you've seen some bad things, I know, and we're going to talk about that. But I want to kind of talk about born in 1920 and born during the Depression. I guess, what are your memories from that time? Is there anything that stands out from your youth?
Well, it wasn't a depression at that time. It became that during my early years. My father worked in a bank, and when he was dying, they made him an honorary vice president. and my mother got an insurance $100 a month, which then was very good.
They kind of
Well, my first year in service, I got $21 a month.
Wow.
yeah, that's what'd you do with all that money? I bet you didn't know where to spend it.
Well, I gave 15 home because I felt guilty going into service, not supporting the family. But I used the other 5 for. Sometimes I'd go out, like when I was stationed in Quantico, I'd go to Washington, hitchhike, of course, and go to the zoo. I entertained myself watching animals.
Wow. So you
This was before the war. Before the Japanese hit.
right. Well, so you joined the Marines before the war started. Not I mean,
Yes, before America got in.
right.
I joined in 1940, and the war started in late 41,
Right.
December.
Right. Why did you join? What was your reason to join at that time?
Oh, I had admiration for militarism,
Hmm.
and I was proud of what was happening over in Europe, the British fighting. I didn't want to join the British, so I joined the Marines. And,
That is awesome. Now, so you joined the Marines. Where did you go to boot camp at?
uh, Paris Island, South Carolina. It's I don't hear it mentioned with all the troubles and hurricane down there. They haven't mentioned Paris Island.
No, they haven't. I'm not. I guess maybe it got missed. Maybe the hurricane knew better than mess with it.
Yeah.
So how was that? How was Paris Island back then in 1940? What was there any experience
Well,
that stood out?
the biggest experience was I was used to uh, going around in shorts and bare feet at home. And when I was there, we went to chow one day, and it was raining, and I just put a poncho over my unclothed body. And when I got to at the table, I took it off. Uh, they didn't bother me much, but my friend that shared the tent with me, a buddy that I joined with, uh, he was not much different from me in his dress. And he refused to take off his poncho, and they said we had to appear before a court martial. And the sentence, they had a school tent, a very big one, and a couple battalions were gathered there. We had a choice of putting on a striptease or, or going to jail.
So you started to dance.
Well, my friend had been to seen stripteases I had, and I just took off my clothes quickly and ended it. But he went through a ritual of teasing them.
Yeah.
And
Wait, you gotta
clever.
use the music. You gotta use the music.
Yeah.
Wow, you weren't too good of a stripper, huh? You just took it right off.
Yeah. Well, most Marines aren't. That's not their forte.
We were proud of that service, yes.
Yeah. So that was
But
a
we
good.
didn't realize it was in the Navy. And going down in the rail car, there was a Navy officer, and my friend Don said to him, "Why didn't you join a good outfit?" And was kidding him. And the Pullman porter had to tell Don that the Marines are under the Navy.
Wasn't aware of that part, huh? That they left that part out.
Yeah, he was kidding this officer.
So that was a quite a first experience to the Marines with showing up in a poncho and having a strip. How were the Marines? How was your experience before joining the paratroopers?
Oh, exciting! I had some, especially these landings offshore. One of them, uh, I got pulled in. I got out of the Higgins boat, and the undertow took me out quite a ways. But I went with it. I let it. I didn't panic and got back. One of the men with me got his uh, killed by the screw on the Higgins boat, and I spent that night sleeping on the destroyer that we were on next to this corpse. So that was the first casualty I saw in the Marine Corps.
And was that during the war, or was that training
No, that
before?
was about a year before.
Oh, so you were just training and you had to experience
Yes.
that. Wow, and that is right next to you, huh?
And then we went to on this destroyer down along the Florida coast, and at Miami Beach, I was good with semaphore, and as our destroyer went down along the coast, there were crowds watching us, and the officer since I was on the right near the officer's deck, and he was communicating with the officer in the boat behind us, and commenting on women along the way. And I did all this with my semaphore.
Wow.
I wasn't too good with the radio. I was slow, but I was good with my hands,
Okay.
but I remained in communication.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was so you when did you go into war? At what point after December 7th did you end up getting shipped into combat?
Oh, with it, after as soon as the war broke out in December, I applied to go to the parachute school, and then it was 6 months later, I guess, that we were the first offensive battle America took against the Japanese.
And which battle was that?
Well, Gavudu actually was the first, and then a little later Guadalcanal.
Right.
But they were the Solomons, and between that we had a time up on Tulagi, and in fact, our encampment was right on the top of Tulagi, were offices at one time for the Solomons, and we could see the sea battle from there. It was the most, I heard, one of the greatest sea battles of all times, and America lost. Three of our cruisers were sunk by the Japanese.
Oh, that was this battle at Savo Island?
I guess, yeah, Savo Island.
Yeah.
That's between Guadalcanal and Tulagi.
Right. Now what happened? The Marine. So you were on an island, and the Navy was off in the ocean, offshore, supporting you. Did they?
Yes.
Did they stay and keep supporting you, or did they have to go fight their own battle?
No, in fact, they left us, and our food ran low at that time. So I was eating taro root uh, good bit of the time.
So you're living off
You
the
know, that's
land.
yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, Other ships couldn't get in, and
That must have been pretty disheartening to be on that foreign soil and to look at your supply chain steaming
well,
off.
I'm sure for the officers it was terrible because they knew more about what our status was. Uh,
So you
we
guys,
just lived from day to day, and I got to say, we really worked together. Our companionship was very good. In his book, Battalion of the Damned, uh, James Christ wrote about all the details of battle. You know how how we all worked together. Um,
yeah.
then when we got to Guadalcanal, we spent a couple nights in the palm grove, and I remember a huge uh, uh, palm nuts falling. You know, they could really hurt you if you were right under them. But then we went up onto this grassy knoll, and we didn't have any action there for a while except the nightly bombing that came over until the Japanese started trying to get in to save their. They had built the airfield and they wanted to save it, but uh, when they came, we really held them, and it was a battle. Uh, in fact, hand grenades were our best weapon, and the Japanese were throwing back grenades too. There's uh, fortunately theirs were more explosive, but didn't kill as much. They did more wounding, and
Huh.
but
The
we had the high
Was
ground.
it
And you were asking,
the? It's interesting. Like you brought up the grenades, and what as Troy and I are both infantrymen. So it's these little details that are so
yes,
intriguing to
the
us.
rifle
Like
was of no use to me and to the soldiers fighting. We were using grenades. I, but of course, we had artillery firing into their numbers. So the ground was covered with corpses of Japanese as we went by.
mm,
Well, some of our men too. But since we were up in the front, I didn't see them much. Just a terrible loss of men the Japanese suffered. Uh, as I never thought of them with hatred. That's one thing. They were just soldiers like us. I only saw one of them on Gavudu. One of our men shot a sniper from a tree, and he survived. He was hurt, but he was limping up, and he was being questioned. One of our men claimed he had learned Japanese, but he really didn't. He just said he was hungry or something. Uh, but the proud way this Japanese stood, and it impressed me. I I saw a real soldier. I Even though my ancestry is German, I don't admire the Germans. Their behavior in the war was terrible. But I don't
Hmm.
know if the Japanese, except these samurai, on occasion committed uh, dastardly deeds, but most of the soldiery were just brave soldiers. And now Japan is one of our good allies.
Now that's such a really neat point that you bring up, sir. And I think our generation we forget too quickly because we have traveled to someone else's land to conduct, our the defense of our nation. That we forget that you and your friends faced a worthy adversary, not on their land, but in this like neutral
Yes,
battle and you both came there and you both had to set up. No one had an advantage. Well, there were advantages, but no one had home field advantage. You were both, on foreign lands trying to do the best for what you knew, and that was your country. And
that's exactly it.
I
Now
really
the
appreciate your sentiment there in acknowledging uh, who they were as warriors, not what we think. Because in Europe we went to their country, we went to their land,
yeah,
we went into their homes. In the Middle East, Troy and I, we went to their land, we went to their homes,
of course
and
you faced treachery that we never faced. Uh,
well, I disagree with that, but the I think treachery is is relative and it comes from perspective. But I think it was so neat that they were enduring on those islands. One of my favorite books. I'm an Army guy, so I've always been fascinated to learn more about the Marine Corps. But one of my favorite books was uh, Helmet for My Pillow, Poncho for My Bed, and
oh,
and they talk about Guadalcanal, and that was a war of attrition, not necessarily a war of violence, although there was extreme violence there, and both sides had to endure. And
that's
I
right.
and like you said, you weren't eating hot chow, you were eating root. You were foraging.
Yeah, and that's the thing that filled my gut when they removed a lot of the uh, colon. The shrapnel was in the colon, and along with the taro root.
Yeah, you lost quite a bit, right? You had a was that what wounded you? Was it a grenade that wounded you?
Yes,
Those nasty grenades, huh?
it, it was real. Their grenades uh, were fiery, and it was close enough. I could have fallen on it and saved others, but I just laid as flat as I could, and most of the explosion went upward, and along the side, a few pieces of shrapnel went into me, my legs and abdomen.
Yeah.
Uh,
And did they evacuate you quickly, or were you stuck there for a
uh,
while?
well, somebody helped me, and I'm eternally grateful to him. He put me on one of these. Uh, it was a jeep, and I was one of the first to be put down, and that was below the iron protection on the sides, and those that came after me were in more danger. In fact, an officer was above me, and he was killed. And along the route, they were firing from the jungle below on both sides, and the driver deserted. He, one of the wounded men sitting next to him is supposedly continued to drive. That was reported in another book other than Chris' book. I read about that.
Huh.
That I don't know what they did to that Marine or whoever was driving the Jeep and deserted it.
Hmm. Now, one thing
But I got this second-handed. I'm not.
right.
I just was there, and I knew they stopped, and there's a lot of uh, arguing or something. But that's all I know.
Hmm. One thing we saw a lot in the movies, and we read about in books and hear about, are in the war during that time were bayonet charges and the Japanese having these long bayonets and that kind of thing. Did you ever witness anything like that?
No, but on Gabudu, some of my friends did. In fact, one of the first of the wounded had his testicle cut off with a bayonet, but he killed the Japanese.
Oh, but he killed the Japanese?
Yeah.
Oh.
They were in close combat.
Well, that guy deserved it.
In a book, I can't think of his name now, but his picture is right next to mine in this picture of our battalion.
Yeah. So you, how long? Now you got wounded and evacuated. Did you end up going back into combat? Did you rejoin your battalion, or what happened after that?
No, I rejoined the battalion. I could have gone back. A ship was in New Zealand and would have taken us back to America, but I refused. I was getting along fine with a family in New Zealand, and I didn't want to just leave them. And so right after that, I went to New Caledonia. And that was an adventure all its own, but no combat.
Right. When you said you were with this family, was it like a host family? Were you staying with them while you were recovering?
I met this girl, and I was every couple of nights I would go to their house. In fact, her brother-in-law was in Europe fighting, and I was able to sleep up in his room in a little tower above the house. And it was very nice.
Yeah.
But and I didn't mind New Caledonia either, but there was no fighting there.
Right.
It was a French island, despite its Scotch name. It was mainly French.
Huh. So you saw, I imagine you were in the Pacific for a while. Are there any places in the Pacific that really stand out, like Japan, or like Fiji or Wake Island? Or
we did stop at Fiji in preparation for the landing in Solomon. And when we got to the beach, I saw this nice cliff, and I climbed up there. I didn't like beaches. I liked the high point, and but it was just a practice landing, and it was nothing like that landing in the Solomons for us. They didn't have quite a cliff like that.
Right. Now the other
one
day.
Of the,
go ahead. Sorry, sir. Go ahead.
Well, this was in the hospital See, I was wounded on the 13th of September, and my first November 3rd was my birthday, and that was the first time I was able to eat in the mess hall in the hospital. And they wheeled me down to the table there. And the guest at the table was a Maori uh, a gentleman, a real old one with, the scrolls on the face. And by the
Yeah.
way, the Maoris are the natives of New Zealand
Yeah.
and are, um, we found them very fine. In fact, they sang the Maori farewell to us when went off to battle. Our ship was leaving, and they sang. Well, but before that, the Maoris and the British had a war, and in that war, uh, they did a lot of killing. And this gentleman at the table was a young man at the time of the Maori Wars, and had been. His father was a chief, and when they cut up the British soldiers to be eaten, he was able to eat them. So I can say I spent my 22nd birthday uh, at a table with a cannibal.
And not too many can say that. That is for sure.
No, I tell that a lot to people. Um,
Yeah,
but
that.
he was a fine gentleman. He was freeloading, of course. He gets a free meal off the Navy,
Oh yeah,
and he probably did that often.
yeah, I'm
But
sure.
all the conversation was about eating human flesh.
Hmm.
Oh.
I'm not sure how much that does for your appetite, but
No. Well, Darwin he liked all the Polynesian people, but not the Maoris, because of that they were cannibals. And,
huh? That is an interesting one
Uh,
right there. I knew I would learn something from you. I didn't expect
The
it to be that.
fierce warrior culture too.
yeah,
Yeah.
Did they
they,
when you said they sang to you, was it like a haka with a
when
dance
they,
or
no, uh, just singing voices. And the Maori Farewell is a nice song. I've forgotten it now, but it's like the Hawaiian one, Aloha Oa.
Hmm. Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure that whole South Pacific, they kind of have that same kind of
Yeah.
genre of music. Yeah.
Well, there's two types of peoples in the South Pacific. The Polynesian, who are fair skinned, and the Melanesian, who are dark skinned. And on New Caledonia, they were Melanesians. So the first cowboys I ever saw were these Melanesian, and the cattle that the French had on New Caledonia were giant, not the little ones we have. In fact, I used the droppings from the male, huge droppings. They were hard on the outside and soft inside. They made nice pillows.
Hey, you got to do what you have to do, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
See, the old helmets that we had before the war were, they called them Iron Kellys. They were flatter. Uh, then they got this German type, and that didn't make a good pillow at all. But the old ones we could
Yeah.
stay out of the.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, I want to kind of just go back and talk about Gavudu real quick as being, the first real battle. I would imagine, I know from my experiences and Toby's and we look in history of all the battles, usually the first battles, Americans usually don't do well. We suffer a lot of losses because we got to kind of figure out what's going on and how to adapt to our enemy. Was that kind of what it was like in Gavudu? Was that a really...
Well, I think of your battles as more terrible because of so many of your men were fathers and had families, tragedy was much greater. Of course, every death was bad, but uh, when somebody died in our time, the people back home didn't want to end the war, as they often do now, they, because it seems to be much more terrible now with
Yeah,
so many young families.
you mentioned that the other day, and I thought that was great perspective. You mentioned how back in your day there weren't as many young fathers and there weren't wives and kids and things like that, right? Most guys weren't.
Right.
Yeah.
I knew none. There some officers had families, but they were out of my range.
Yeah.
And but
But
all my close companions were unmarried even. So,
so that's why you feel today is worse because there's so many kids that lose parents and spouses and stuff.
yeah, that's one of the reasons. Another is they're among people they can't trust. You know, some are for them, some are against. Like Afghanistan, you never really know who's really ready to change.
Right. Now, I understand from James you have some connection to Afghanistan. Is that correct?
With Afghanistan,
Yes, sir.
yes, I one of my students was. This was before even the Russians came in. This student, RLUNG Rung, Amdasagar Rung, was supposedly the top mathematician in all of Afghanistan. He pronounced it, and under the emperor, and he he was going to take over my class on computer science. I was explaining something, and he goes up to the board and begins carrying on, but he didn't do so well. That was just his beginning.
So that was back before the Russians. So you said student
Yeah.
in class. So is that what when you got out of the Marine Corps, did you go on to be a teacher?
Uh, well, then I went to school. After 7 years in service, I went into. I went to the University of Buffalo to get a degree, and I did want it to be mathematics, and I did well because I really have a mediocre IQ, but I worked hard. I came out with summa cum laude, uh, but I got things published, and even though I never completed my doctorate, I was able to stay in college teaching. Uh,
So is that what you did for your career? Pretty after the Marine Corps
you know, I spent about 60 years teaching in colleges,
all in
various.
the Western New York area mostly.
Yes, mostly was, in fact, all of Western New York, Fredonia. Uh, I wound up 30 years in Buffalo State, but I also taught uh, 7 years in Fredonia, 7 in the University of Buffalo.
Okay.
You know,
And you taught
I did.
you taught mathematics the whole time. You taught advanced math and things like that.
Yes, in fact, a funny thing happened this year. On of all times, the Ides of March. I, in a dream, I was teaching a class in number theory, and I was telling my students, take the sum of the numbers 2 plus 4 plus 6 plus 8 all the way up to 16 as the numerator. Add those together. And the denominator, all the odd numbers, 1, 3, 5, 7, up to 15. and then you get a fraction and reduce it to its lowest terms. And I said, because its numerators are all even numbers and its denominators all odd, you'd expect the simplification to have an even numerator, but it doesn't. And of course, if you, it's always, uh, it'll always come out the number of terms in the numerator and denominator, whatever that number is. Like this one would be 8, 2, 4, 6, up to 16, 8, and the denominator would have 8. The fraction will reduce to the denominator will be 8 and the numerator 9, one greater. If I had gone one more, it would have been 10 over 9.
Wow, you have not forgotten your math, that is for sure. Because I think you just retaught me some stuff.
Well, that was in a dream, and I've never done anything like that otherwise. So it's
it is still fresh with you. Yeah.
Hey, sir, one of the, I like asking this question because it reminds me of, some of the lighter side, yet the adversity that as infantrymen, we face in combat. Was there a point in time where, everyone in the unit, kind of just gave up on, making an effort for personal hygiene? I know, like, you were short on uniforms, boots were in, ill repair, if not missing. Y'all were, growing big old beards, making the best attempt at looking like hippies.
Well, I went into combat with a terrible uniform. Before we landed, they had washed our clothes, and in the pile, I was last to get there, so I was stuck with the uniform that was there. It was a raggedy pants and shirt too. And one of my friends, I can't think of his name offhand now. He was an Indian, American Indian. He had to use a Japanese uniform he put on to replace the one he had. And while we were walking along the heights of Tulagi, General Rupertus had him seized. He thought he was a Japanese, and I was one to explain that he was a paratrooper.
Oh, was that Jesse Young Deer? Was it his?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's. How did you remember that?
Oh, James was telling me that story.
Oh,
Yeah.
The Indian closest to me was Ken Parker. He was a Seneca Indian from our area here, and he got wounded right at the same time I did. But he went back to the States, and then he no longer was in the parachute battalion, but he went on and he got killed on Iwo Jima.
Mm. Wow.
Those American Indians were very brave and excellent soldiers.
Yes. So Jesse was he had to dress in a Japanese uniform because his uniform was just tattered.
Right. He didn't have just to be clothed.
Right. Yes, and so
he still had to protect from the elements, the sun.
I used to remark that it made the what were they? One of the American in the Revolutionary War look like polished gentlemen in their uniforms when they were supposed to be looking raggedy.
Yes.
Compared to the way we did.
Yeah, absolutely. The so of course the Battle of of Edson's Ridge, also known as Bloody Ridge. I mean, it was in Edson's Ridge, named after the colonel, right? The Raider or the paratrooper
Yeah,
commander.
the Raiders colonel, and the hero on our side was Torgerson. Uh, I didn't care for him because, uh, in fact, it was before we went overseas. We were uh, North Carolina. I've forgotten the name of the camp in tents, and uh, he walked by and saw me writing and asked what I was doing, and I said, I just discovered something, and I showed a development of it. He had me come into his tent and show him, and I noticed he wasn't really paying attention to my mathematics, and I told the others that he didn't seem to show any interest in my mathematics, but he followed me intently, and they said, "Don't you know Captain Zero?" He was one of those kind, and he kept after me in many ways. In fact, the day before the battle on Guadalcanal, he insisted that I be shaved. I was proud of my red beard, and he he clipped it off and started to shave it, and I finished it up. But uh, that's the way I felt about him. But he was brave. Do. He had me working with him on Gavudu, blasting cave mouths, uh,
Oh,
shoving Bangalore torpedo these pipe bombs.
Yep.
yeah, yeah. Bangalore's.
Yeah. In fact, I was tamping them with TNC aboard ship. I didn't know we would ever use them, but I was good at climbing, and I would go down the hill to the cave mouth from the top. Those that went below to the cave mouth often got killed because they could be seen better or something. So my method proved to be safer than the others.
So you came from the top. You came from either the side or the
Came
top.
above and shoved in. And Torgerson wanted me to get a thrill out of setting it off. I didn't. It didn't make any difference to me blasting it.
So you and him, was it just you and him together, working together, doing that?
We worked on see something. The group. He was a company commander, and just before the battle, his men wanted a different. He was no longer their company commander, so he sort of freebooting us. And I was supposed to be the radio man to the original commanding officer who was wounded in the landing. So we were two oddballs working together on.
Huh.
Uh,
You talked earlier about the officers knew what was going on, like when the ships left and all that, and of course officers are always a target. Were they a target on those islands? Were the Japanese enemy looking for them? Did you?
I don't know. In fact, the officers didn't show. They were just as seedy looking as we knew them by faces, and I don't
They didn't stick
remember
out.
looking at insignia at all because there's such close combat.
Right. Right.
Uh,
There was no saluting going on, I'm sure.
Another thing that was sort of crazy were the passwords. They had to have L in it, and
Oh,
uh, some officer made the password polyglot. I was one of the few people that, since I liked language, that knew what polyglot meant. It's one who likes a lot of languages.
And what does it mean?
Well, it's just many languages. I don't know precisely, but a polyglot would know several languages.
Oh, okay.
Right.
I got you.
The
But everybody was saying polywog, you know.
I, it's so neat, like to think about just those subtle little nuance, like the challenge and password having a letter in it that the enemy would struggle with due to their dialect.
Yeah.
And like what a subtle little thing that now we have all
Except
these.
that the Japanese are so bright, I think they would overcome
They would
it.
have figured it out. The of all the places that you were at in the Pacific, I mean, you witnessed, one of the probably, if you take Pearl Harbor out of the equation, Savo Islands, the greatest naval defeat of the U.S. You
Oh
were at
yeah.
Gavatu. Uh, all these places that you were at, what stands out? The Guadalcanal, Savo Island, like all these things. What stands out the most to you as the most
Well,
important place that you witnessed? Of all things
I
you witnessed,
was
what do you
happiest
reflect
on
back on?
Tulagi because even though there was no battle or anything, some natives from Florida Island, which is right next to us, would come, and that's the only civilians I saw were these men from Florida Island. Oh, it was a strange experience between Florida and Tulagi. It was just a narrow strait. In fact, Kitchener said it was the finest natural harbor in the world or something. But a Japanese cruiser, after they had won their battle there, they cruised down this estuary between Florida and Tulagi. And I happened to be along the shore with a lot of other Marines, and they were only maybe 100 yards away, and they were in their dress finery, the Japanese sailors eyeing one another. We didn't shoot at them. That was sensible, you know. We just let them go by. But some Marine down the way did fire, and the Japanese returned with a heavy gun, one of their on the bow, and the shell hit one of the Marines, not the one that fired, but another one in the shoulder, and it didn't explode until well beyond him, but it tore his. I saw him in the hospital later. It pulled out his whole arm and his shoulder. It was a terrible looking wound. He survived it, of course, but uh, it was terrible damage to his body. Just by somebody firing a shot at these Japanese, and they returned the fire. And we could have just let them make their little tour, and that would have been it.
Hmm. Wow, and I can't imagine, getting hit with a shell like that. Yeah, I would. He was blessed to survive that. I mean, I imagine an inch more over to the side, it would have been a different outcome.
Yeah.
Yeah,
If it had exploded when it hit his arm,
that would have been bad
at
too.
that moment he would be gone. But it went on before the explosion,
Yes.
and it didn't hurt him that way.
Anything else during all, like Toby was saying, there all those travels, and anything stood out that was a shining moment, that was a positive thing, or anything that stood out that was just shocked you, that it was something like you thought you'd never see?
Oh, well, while we were on Guadalcanal, we did make another tour. A Japanese was making a landing up the way, and we got on these old flush decker destroyers, and went up, and uh, there was not much. I didn't see any action, and the Japanese didn't fight back or anything. They just stayed in the jungle, and but after it was over, we got back on one of these Higgins boats going to the main destroyer, and uh, the guy next to me had a Johnson automatic rifle, and uh, it went off suddenly and took the hand off the man next to him,
Ooh.
and that was, wrestling with this man that was hurt, and uh, that was a shocking experience. But it was the only experience where I could see the person in the throes of agony of having been hurt. When in the battles, the guy I would kill with a grenade, I didn't see him at all, and there's no point in firing a rifle at a bunch of shadows, and so the grenades were the best way to fight them.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. The one thing I want to ask about, I hear about these Navy traditions, and I understand you were in one of them, but I think they call it it's something to do with the equator, the shellback ceremony, and
Oh yeah, when you cross the equator uh, for the first time, you you have to go before a court. They call him Neptunus Rex. Decides what to do with you. You're a pollywog when
Yeah.
before that happened, and I knew what they would do. They would shave your head and that, and but I wanted to go first to get it done with. So I was one of the first to go before Neptunus Rex. And the worst part of it was, then they flog you as you go down to kiss the royal baby. That's a big fat sailor. He kissed his belly button,
Uh,
and that was the worst part to me.
well,
Even though
for
they
any man.
flogged me with wet towels.
oh man, so
Yeah,
it was a little bit of an initiation ceremony, but kissing a fat dude's belly button, that's
if the ship can, if it's too crowded, they couldn't do that. But this ship, the Mizar, didn't have that many people aboard, so they could spend time on these things. And maybe 1,000 aboard,
wow.
but big transport would have several thousand that couldn't go through that.
Well, you'd already had the dance of striptease and basic training, so I guess
Yeah.
anything else was easy.
Yeah, I
So,
but
what,
I think all military men have something in common that I don't know how women work out in forces now, how they can have the same type of camaraderie.
That's good perspective because we wonder the same thing. I think it's. I mean, there's definitely women serving in a lot of great places, but as you know, men kind of have a certain sense of humor, like you've said.
Yes, I'm not against women being in service, but I just wonder how they can have the same type of camaraderie that we had.
it'll definitely be different, and I think it's interesting you bring that up, being that your mom was with suffrage.
Yeah.
But speaking of senses of humor, a question I've been dying to ask since you've been on is you were a paratrooper in the Marine Corps. In the Army,
Yeah.
when there's a person that is not airborne qualified, they are a dirty leg and they are mocked and ridiculed. Is there the same in the Marine Corps? Because there's not a lot of airborne qualified to this day.
No,
There's not a lot of
we
airborne
hardly
qualified.
felt different from the rest.
Only the Raiders and Recon are airborne qualified. So,
Yeah.
did you guys like have any like hazing or things that you would do to people that you looked down upon because they didn't have those little wings?
Well, we did have differences in our exercises. Like right now, when I see somebody make the backward flip, I wonder how did I do that? I can't imagine how it came about, but we did it a lot. The forward flip is easy, but the backward one is hard.
So did you guys have different? You stood out in uniforms a little bit different. Did you hang out with people that
No,
weren't airborne qualified, or did you kind of stay to the airborne guys, stay to themselves?
we just had a little badge, on the green jackets. There was a something indicating you were a paratrooper.
Right.
But my parachute, uh, one of the, it was my, I think, fourth jump from, this is outside of Lakehurst, New Jersey, where they have this huge uh, uh, building that in which the um dirigibles would park. They
The
it was
blimps.
very large.
Yeah, the big blimps they had back then.
Yeah, and when I was because of my name, I was the last to come out of the. You hook up on the cable before you go out, and then you put your arm. You always carried a spare chute, and you had to then put your arm over the spare chute as you went out, so it didn't come up and hit you in the face. Well, the man ahead of me, I was so close to him, my arm went around his uh, the cable that pulled out his chute, and it caused me to excuse me. Uh,
Bless you.
I I went upside down against the empennage of the plane and got tangled up in the shrouds of my chute. And I took the time to untangle them. Of course, we were jumping from 1,000 feet, so I had a lot of time to do it. By the time I got it off, I was almost on the. I was the last one out, but the first one down. And several new recruits, seeing this fall, I went behind the huge blimp. I forgot what you call it. Oh, hangar. And they thought I got killed. So many of them quit the paratroopers at that time.
You flushed them out.
You're like, you're
Yeah.
like, not today.
Yeah. So you were towed parachutists. That's what we would call a towed parachutist, right? You were being
Heavy
still.
drop.
You were being
Well, we
dragged.
packed our own chutes. That was the thing, and they were made of silk, very expensive shoes. The packing was done very carefully. I had a student, an Israeli paratrooper, Jan Ronald Yakubovitz, who explained they changed from these circular chutes that we used to have to square them off so the circular chute rocked all directions. But when you got rid of that, you could control them better. And he went through parachute school at the same time as Idi Amin, the Israeli,
Oh,
let and Edie only made one jump and they gave him his wings.
privilege.
but but this Ron Yakubovich was in on that raid. I don't know if you recall it, where hijackers had taken
Yeah.
a French plane into uh, Entebbe.
Yeah, and Idi Amin
And
protected him.
was that?
Yeah, Idi Amin.
Yeah. And because they communicated with Idi Amin, they were able to stall off action for several days. And then they made a raid on it and saved all the people. But the director, the leader of the raid, this Ron Yakubovich was the only enlisted man in on that. Uh, but the leader was Yannick Netanyahu, the oldest brother of the present prime minister,
Yeah.
and he got killed. He was,
Wow. I would.
but
This is what 98 years. You have so much experience. I never
Yeah.
expected we were going to talk about that. I mean,
Of all things, we're
yeah,
talking about a raid in Africa.
yeah.
yeah. Well, I think of that as one of the major exploits of all time. It was done so skillfully.
Yes. The
But
wow. So you know we when I asked you earlier, we talked about Toby and I asked about some of the things you've seen that stood out. Was there anything from your time in the Pacific, South Pacific, that was that still leaves you with a smile today? Anything that just warmed your heart?
oh yeah. Well, one of the things was when I with the civilians, I wanted to go swimming, and there was a pier there, uh, and I didn't have a bathing suit, so I used this girl's chute, and I used the brassiere like a belt. But I was always diving in the water. I never just jumped. And when I dove, uh, it ripped my pants off, and I was thrashing around there trying to find them before I was stark naked because it took off these bathing suit completely. Fortunately, I did find it and get into it again, but that was a laughable
Uh,
occasion.
It was an itsy bitsy teeny weeny marine paratrooper bikini.
Yeah, uh, yeah. I've had funny things happen. Some aren't so funny. My first flight, uh, when I went into flight training, the I was flying a Piper Cub. It was all plexiglass or something, and we made the landing. I had done all the work with my instructor, and he got out and he said, "Now you circle the field and land." It would be my first solo flight, and I took off, and I was supposed to make all left turns, and as I took off, the whole side blew out, the plexiglass, and the air coming in made my plane sink quickly. So I reversed it and made right turns to the landing. I violated the instructions, but it came out all right.
Yeah,
That,
there's not much a Piper Super Cub. Uh, most of the structures around the doors, everything else is just a little bit of strut and some fabric mounted on top of some bush tires. No, like you lose that little bit, you don't have much left.
yeah,
Yeah, that's man, you have definitely been through it. The it's one of the things too, James had told me about. He was telling me about the night before the invasion of Guadalcanal, and you saw a movie and how that and what that
Oh
movie.
yeah, that wonderful movie. The real, uh, the real,
Real Glory.
uh, real glory. That's it. With Gary Cooper and uh, in there, the Moros, who are Muslims, were killing the Igorotis when they land, and uh, they tyrannize them. And in that movie, they happened to capture Moro, and he was alive, and they said they're going to. This was Gary Cooper. He was a doctor or something. He said, "Tell him it will kill him and feed him to the pigs." and,
And
and
that,
that fear of swine or something
right, right.
made him.
And that was what you saw. That was the movie you watched the night before the
Yeah,
invasion.
like
Well, at least they had a
night
little.
before the invasion.
At least they had a little recreation for you. You got a chance to unwind and watch a pleasant movie.
We had movies that wherever there was an occasion, the opening there'd be a movie. Not on Guadalcanal and that part, but on New Caledonia when we were there, they'd have movies every couple nights. A new movie.
Right.
So movies played a big role in my life. When I think in service, with not having a lot of money, I attended the movies that the service provided.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's it. The wow. One thing I noticed, Paul, in our talk tonight is you had a lot of nakedness time, from stripping to swimming to.
Yeah.
There's a theme there. I'm not sure much of your family knew about. We may have educated some of them too.
What's that again?
Yeah, I said there's a theme there. I'm not sure all your family knew that. We have a lot of your nieces and nephews that are listening to the show. So,
Oh,
yeah, the website I gave you last night, I guess you were able to get that out to them because we're enjoying a lot of them listening. But
well, I sure got a lot of nieces and nephews.
you sure do. You sure do. The hey, we don't want to. Go ahead, sir.
My father and mother had 6 children, and they had children with big families. It's in the hundreds, I guess.
Wow. It we've kept you up for a while tonight, and I really appreciate your time. I don't want to keep you too late, but is there anything else that you kind of just want to mention that you want to make sure our listeners hear?
Well, no, I probably bored them.
Oh no, you haven't. We've got a big group listening, and trust me, they've enjoyed this. Because you're giving not just what you're giving snippets of maybe what we know about from history, but more importantly, you're giving us what real life was like back then in and around while you're going to combat, whether you're kissing a fat sailor's belly button, or you see a beautiful sunrise or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
You give us a lot of that we just don't. You can't get that in movies and stories and books. But
Well, thank you for the way you let me go on.
Yeah.
oh, it's not a problem. I hope we can have you on again. Like I say, I don't want to keep you up too late. But and I hope you and I stay in touch, sir. There's no reason we shouldn't, because I'm just down the road from you.
Well, you can stop in on me anytime. There's no seats in here, but you could come in and look at it.
All right. Well,
He needs to stand up anyway.
yeah, I'll stand up. That's fine. I will definitely take you up on that. I'll stay in touch with you. Did you get the letter today, by the way, in the mail? Did that
Yes.
show? Oh, good.
That's interesting. Both of you have interesting stories. You and Toby.
Good. I'm glad you got that. Thank you very much. All right. Well, hey, so again, thank you so much for joining us tonight. It was truly all of our honor and pleasure,
Absolutely.
and
Uh,
I'm glad I've met you through James. He is such an awesome guy, and I hope to continue our friendship and get some more of these stories from you.
well, thank you, Troy, and thank you, Toby.
Thank you, sir.
Uh,
All right, sir. Well, thank you. You have a great night, and you stay
you
warm.
too.
You stay warm.
Bye
All
now.
right. Bye bye.
Take care.
Bye bye. All right. That was
How, how, dude, how about that? Like, first and foremost, World War II, the Pacific, one of the most savage and treacherous times in the history of the world, where a man engaged in the most extravagant of combat, like climbing rock faces after jumping out of boats that were launched from boats into water with too much weight that they couldn't stand at the swim. I mean, all of these things. And, like you and I are infantrymen. He's clearly an infantryman. And, the things that we remember is borrowing a bikini, like, but also saying like it was a waste of time to use your rifle because
dude, that blew my mind.
The terrain and the vegetation was, made them ineffective. So it was a war of explosion. It was a war. And then to rationalize, well, their grenades, while they packed a bigger punch, they lacked the shrapnel to do the damage.
Yeah, more fire, he said. More fire.
Yeah. No, like just, God bless them.
Yeah, that was. I mean, there were some enlightening things there. Through that whole talk, but that was probably the one that stuck out to me the most. Was we didn't really use our rifles. I mean, you would never see that in a movie, right? There's no movie that's gonna glamorize just throwing grenades back and forth,
And that's the beauty. He talked about that camaraderie. He talked about that fellowship. Like, we did not experience what he experienced, but yet the human condition and our experiences colored our lens to which we could appreciate his experience.
Yes.
And he said some things that like really blew my mind, like his appreciation for what we experienced. Because I don't think what we endured or experienced can be compared to Guadalcanal.
No. And you know why? You know why? And I tell people, because we knew we were back in a year, right?
Right.
Back then, right? Prior to Vietnam,
you either died.
You
either died or you went home.
Right. You got wounded. You died or you stayed until the war was over. There was no short timer calendar. There was no I'm counting down my year and I'm rotating out. No, you just go to another battle zone. You're going, and God forbid you went from Europe to the South Pacific or vice versa.
Yeah, there was no Rip Toa.
No,
like
you went.
You weren't like, well, these guys are going to come in. They're going to right seat for a little bit, and then we're going to hang out and get extra ice cream.
Yeah. Like, I'm punching out. I'm in my last couple of weeks. I'm not going outside the wire. No, these guys just were like, hey, you conquered this island. We're going to that one now.
Yeah. Oh, and while you're on this island, see those boats leaving out there? We don't know if they're coming back.
Yeah.
Sucks to be you.
They're in their own battle because that's what happens. See, there's a lot we know for our listeners that are watching. James is awesome. And if you don't remember James Christ, we've had him on the show. Anyone that knows me knows James has written a number of books about ETTs, what I did in Afghanistan, a number of them, but some of the most horrific, biggest battles in Afghanistan you never heard about. But before that, he was writing about guys like Paul. He was writing about the Marine Raiders and paratroopers in Guadalcanal and all that stuff. He wrote about them for years. And James gave us a lot of info before this interview, which Mr. Schill was very appreciative because he was like, hey, I don't know what you want to ask me, but just, hopefully you'll tell me what you want me to talk about. And there's a lot more that we know this gentleman went through. But, as you heard, we tried to guide him. He wanted him to feel free to talk what he wanted to talk about. Yeah. But there's more. We could definitely have him back on, Toby, because there's I mean, we could definitely dive deeper
No.
into some stuff. I mean,
I mean, what we really need to do is, sit down at a table,
yeah,
put a microphone in the middle, and just let them loose.
yeah,
Lauren Bruner style, just let them loose.
yeah,
The
absolutely.
but it's important. We open the show talking about World War One. Um, it's important that we talk to these guys and hear them and learn from them and appreciate them, because I remember the news alert saying that there was no more World War One veterans alive. And I remember that moment thinking back and and just kind of realizing that we will never learn from that because we don't have the firsthand account. We have this historical documentation of it, but we don't have this firsthand account. And there's so much to be said about the oral tradition. There's so much to be said about firsthand account, and like we need to hear these men and women from this time. If ever there was a time in our country that we needed to hear this and be reminded of this, it's now.
Yes.
We're tearing each other apart. We're talking about how hard our lives are. Where this guy is like willing to don the apparel and uniform of the enemy to shield his body from the elements, knowing that the chances are just by donning that he's going to be targeted by his own men. Like it wasn't because he was making a fashion statement. He's like, I'm going to throw on this Che shirt and people are going to think I'm radical. No, like he was shielding his body from the elements, and all he had was to take the uniform off a dead enemy, because his skin was getting burned and thrashed by the leaves of the grass where they were at. Like there's so much here. There's so many depths to the layers, but this is stuff that we need to be reminded of.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
These are national treasures. People would say, well, a national treasure is someone like Buzz Aldrin or whatever, or Lady Bird Johnson. Yeah, true, awesome. I agree 100%. They are treasures. These gentlemen that went to these islands should be, in my opinion, one of our most sacred treasures. The guys that jumped into Salerno, these guys, they should be Market Garden, the Bulge, Bloody Ridge.
yeah,
You name it. They should be. We should treat them with a place of honor. We should listen to them, and we should be inspired because they're not here whining.
right, right. No, I mean, this is why we do the show, and I wish I could express on camera or in my voice how honored and flattered I am from this. This is why we do this, because but doing this for a long time. Toby and I have been doing this for a long time together, and I did it for a long time before that. And I've had the interviews that I've interviewed hundreds and hundreds of people, and honestly, I'll be a lot I don't remember. Time goes on and stuff, but there's ones that stand out. I'll tell you who stands out. People like Lauren Bruner, people like Paul Shillow. I've interviewed someone that was in the Bataan Death March. I interviewed a gentleman who was until he passed away, as he's a retired general, Marine general. He was the commander on Iwo Jima, the company that raised the flag. I mean, every time I've brought those kind of interviews to Toby, we've been part of that and brought them to the internet and the airwaves. I just feel like it's what I can do to give back to let people hear these stories. And the few times I've talked to Paul, it's just been like the other night last night I talked to him one more time, and I was just like, this is what we want to talk about. And to him, it's his life. It's like me and you, right? We go to Afghanistan or Iraq, and we're just like, yeah, that's what we did. We did our thing, and we don't think about it. But our civilian friends or people that never experienced it are just like, listening to every word. We're just kind of like, yeah, it was everyday life. It's kind of boring, whatever. And that's kind of the way he is with this. But we're just like national treasure. Yeah. I mean, that's why I was pushing it so hard today. So I'm so glad we had the number of listeners and viewers, and I hope people keep catching the archives, because I was like, you're not going to hear this anymore. I mean, we get to tap into Paul's family, and thank you so much for those that nieces and nephews and a family, extended family that tuned in and listened. But I mean, we're so blessed to be able to experience what you've experienced. I mean, he's the last surviving member of that Battle of Edson's Ridge or Bloody Ridge, both the same thing, and everything else, man. The stuff with Israel, the stuff with the shellback ceremony, all the stuff he's done to be able to just hopefully get the word out, and so people could go back and listen to this and say, I heard from someone firsthand. He's 98 years young. I mean, but he's living in Buffalo, and Buffalo can be a cruel place sometimes, that weather. But, as you could tell, I mean, he gets along great. He's got a memory better than anything, and he dreams up math problems that smoked me.
No, he started getting into the math, and I was like, please stay with this conversation. Please stay with this conversation. Like, I got my phone out. I was like pulling up the calculator. I'm like, I will figure this out.
It's like
That was
integers
awesome.
and net positives and go up to 16, and I'm like, what?
It's like, damn it, I'm gonna get lost.
Yeah.
And I did. No, it was awesome. I'm glad you reminded people. If you're still listening to us live, share with your friends. We are on iHeartRadio, Spotify, the Twitch, the YouTube. Obviously here, Facebook Live, Spreaker. You can download us on Spreaker. And, of course, www.stewandthenunn.com is a great place to listen to everything.
Find all the links right there. I just updated it
all
today.
The links.
I updated
all
it today.
Links.
That's right.
Yeah. If you like the social medias, you can find us at Stu and the Nun on the Instagram. You can find us on the Twitter, as Boston Maggie says, the Twitter. And then you can find us, obviously, or you already have here on Facebook.
Yeah, or any of the mediums that you're watching or listening on. Yeah, definitely like the page, like all that stuff. We've got some more great ones coming up. We're racking and stacking December, we want to remind you we will not be on next week. It is Thanksgiving, so we'll take a week off. But we're going to be spending time with family. We hope all of you are doing the same thing. And
you should be.
As you said, Toby, in these times today, there's a lot of divisiveness, even within families and politics and all this stuff. Let me just say, none of that stuff matters. Don't bring it up at the dinner table. No one wants drama there. Just leave it for a bit and just, enjoy. Because you know what? When you're on your deathbed or your family's on their deathbed, you're not going to be arguing about politics or who is right or anything else. You're going to wish you had a few more moments. You're going to wish that you hugged someone tighter. So, as we get into this season of Thanksgiving, where be thankful. Paul's family, I'm sure, is thankful that he's still here and able to they can listen to him and partake. And all of you probably are, those that still have family members around that are probably thankful that they're still there. And if you don't, you're probably wishing you could just spend one more Thanksgiving with them. So keep that in mind as you spend it with friends or loved ones or family or whatever. This just do that, right? Do that little part for your country. Do that for your family and spread your sphere of influence that way, right? Don't give it a day or two break from flaming anybody up, and maybe you can influence someone positive that way. Maybe the life you impact or make a difference on, you would maybe not never know, but you could have a big one. Just do something kind, right? With that, I want to make sure I also mention the people that are kind to us, Toby, and that's Enlisted 9 Fight Company and Road Armor, our sponsors. And want to thank them. We didn't thank them at the start of the show, but you guys were watching the logos the whole time. So want to thank them for all they do for us, and want to thank all of you for letting us come into your homes tonight and letting Paul come in and tell his story. And we are blessed to be able to bring that to you. So
we are fortunate and grateful.
And my hat matches your vest. I just realized.
Well,
we are coordinated.
My hair matches your beard.
Yeah, because it doesn't match my hair. That's for sure. But nice. But all right, Toby. We got anything else you want to cover before we wrap it up?
No, I'm good, man.
Okay.
I'm just overwhelmed and blessed and grateful. So Thanks everyone for tuning in. We'll see you in 2 weeks.
2 weeks. We already got guests lined in the queue. And Toby, I will be out slaying some deer this weekend. So I'll be sure to probably send you some pictures. But And who knows what I'll throw on the IG. I'll probably throw some stuff up on the IG too. So keep an eye on the IG.
This will be the first weekend I won't be out hunting
or fishing or doing something.
Or doing something like that because long-time listener and multiple-time guest of the show, Travis Cox, is getting married. And so
is that this weekend? That is this weekend. I will be
at the wedding doing wedding stuff. I'll even clean up. And,
are you going to do any? Maybe you'll do some IG or some Facebook Live and from there. That would on the dance floor maybe.
Ooh,
you know, because I know Travis, being a former Marine, is going to bring it strong on that open bar. I'm sure.
Well, we'll find out.
Yeah,
we'll find out.
All right. Well, good. Glad someone's making an honest woman of him or honest man of him. But anyways, all right. Well, good one. Congratulations, Travis. Big love to you, dude. Great move and congratulations in your new life there. And everyone, thank you again for joining us. You all have a great week, great next week at Thanksgiving, and we will see all of you on the 29th of November, 8 p.m. here on Stu and the Nunn. Thank you for joining us for another episode of Stu and the Nunn Radio. We hope you enjoyed your time with us because we have enjoyed sharing our time with you. Be sure to check out stewandthenunn.com in addition to asking us questions and interacting with us on our Facebook page and Twitter. We look forward to seeing you next Tuesday at 8 p.m. Eastern here on Spreaker and Facebook Live. Also, we'd like to thank our sponsors, Warrior Media Solutions, BlueHammer.com, Veteran Outdoors, Graybeard Publishing, and Mighty Oaks Warrior Foundation. Don't forget to like our Facebook page and follow us on Twitter. Thank you again, and have a good night.